Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 1980 classic horror Friday the 13th. The film is directed by Sean S. Cunningham and it stars Betsy Palmer, Adrian King, Jeannie Taylor and Kevin Bacon. Right, okay. This film it focuses on Camp Crystal Lake. There's a bunch of teens that turn up to be camp counsellors. There's a little bit of work that needs to be done. They need to work together to get the camp up to scratch. What they don't realise is they're warned by the locals that it's also known as Camp Blood because in the 50s there was some murders that took place on this camp after a child drowned. They don't obviously pay much attention to this. They carry on with their work. However, there is a sinister presence and someone is killing these teenagers one at a time. Right. What are my thoughts on Friday the 13th? Well, I put a poll up on the channel a good few days ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, asking which horror franchise you wanted me to focus on next and do some reviews on. And this one came out on top after, well over 1,500 votes, probably closer to 200 to be fair. So here we are. I am going to focus on the Friday the 13th films. Now I have a bit of a confession to make. This is probably one of the horror franchises I know least about. I don't honestly think up to this point I'd watched a Friday the 13th film all the way through. And there's a few reasons for that. For me, Halloween has always been my franchise in regards to slasher films like this. I think Michael Myers is a more interesting character. And I think it's fair to say, you could argue, and I will judge for myself, I'm guessing, that these films kind of developed into hokey slapstick almost by the end of the run. But definitely, I can't honestly remember, and I might have done in my younger years, but I can't remember. I can't remember watching one of these all the way through. I remember snippets of some of them. I remember snippets of this, but I genuinely don't think I'd seen it all the way through up to this point. So what are my thoughts on it? Well, this is kind of hard to review to some degree because I'm trying to review it, if you like, seeing it for the first time, imagining what people would have thought when they saw it for the first time in 1980. Because up to that point, obviously we'd had Halloween, and the makers of this have quite come out and quite clearly said that, they were inspired by Halloween. So, they made no secret of that. So it was spawned from the Halloween movie, and, I suspect when this came out, it would have been really quite impactful and, fairly tense and, a well-received slasher film. It was well-received. It was made on, I think, about 500,000 budget, and it made worldwide about 60 million. So definitely a hit film. Obviously, it was, which is why we got more. But watching it now, after seeing all these years worth of slasher films and copycats of Halloween and Friday the 13th and all these other and Scream and all these others, alarmingly, it feels quite tired, if you like, the genre watching it. It was quite fascinating and interesting to, watch one of the early versions of these type of films, and like the setting the ground rules that films kind of continue to follow for many, many decades and still do. And I found, the graphic violence here, if you could call it that. I mean, for the time, it would have been very, very graphic. And there are some graphic deaths, I suppose you could say, in this film. Certainly at the time they would have been considered, and even now, there's a couple of deaths here in this film that kind of, are quite graphic, I suppose you could argue. Kevin Bacon's death is quite memorable. Someone kind of gets an axe through the head, someone gets a slice across the throat, so on and so forth. And obviously the big twist here in this film, and guys, if you've not seen this, spoilers ahead, the big twist here is that Jason actually isn't in this film. the killer is in actual fact his mother, Mrs. Voorhees, played by Betsy Palmer, who wasn't keen on doing this film but needed the money. So for quite a while afterwards, she kind of didn't want anything to do with it. But I think when she realised, the impact it had had on the young culture at the time, came around and started going to conventions and stuff later on. But yeah, it's Mrs. Voorhees who is the killer in this film, who is taking her vengeance out on anybody that turns up at Camp Crystal Lake, or Camp Blood, as they like to call it, some of the locals, and punishes anybody that turns up at the camp. Jason only makes an appearance right at the end of the film, obviously when he kind of pulls the girl into the water, the final girl, so to speak. Alice, is it? So it's really for the second one when we really get to see Jason doing what he does best, which is like chopping people into, small pieces. So I'm quite looking forward to checking out the second one to kind of meet Jason for the first time. I'm not sure how the franchise kind of transitions into that. I suspect it won't be subtle. So yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to say. Do I think this is in the same league as Halloween? No, I don't. For me, it can't be in that same league. Even now, I think the difference is, I think even now, if I watch Halloween, and I've seen it dozens of times, obviously, it still gets you. Parts of that film still get you. The soundtrack and the tense direction by John Carpenter, the intense direction, and it's just so tense is that film, and frightening. And the whole idea of Michael Myers, I just think that film is far more impactful and more of a true horror than this. This is a kind of a different beast, but it's kind of tipping its hat to, obviously, movies like Halloween. So, I don't get me wrong, I had fun with this. I thought it was very watchable, enjoyable, and well made for the most part. It kind of delivers what you want it to deliver in regards to a movie. And at the time, they obviously didn't realise that it was going to turn into the huge franchise that it turned into and spawned so many sequels. In actual fact, I'm not actually sure how many sequels there are. I need to do some research in regards to the order to watch these films in, and I will finish by watching, I believe they did they do a remake of Friday the 13th? I'm sure they did a few years ago, around the time when they did Halloween and all the others. So I'll probably watch that last as well to see what I think of that. But yeah, I need to do a bit of research, check out the order to which to watch the films, how many of them there are, so on and so forth. And this is obviously going to take me a few weeks to review them all. Let me know in the comments if you've got a personal favourite of the Friday the 13th films. Tell me what I've got to look forward to, and I will definitely be looking forward to checking out more of these movies. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed checking out this review. I'll be back with plenty more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.